I think we are starting to educate ourselves and learn how to fail and know that that's not the end of the line. It's just this, this issue of grit and getting back up and trying it again.
We as designers have a calling to actually address. We have some very big problems in our world. And as designers, we can sit back and let the opportunity of crisis pass us by, or we can suit up, boot up, and actually get to the business of solving these problems.
This is Cindy Allen, Editor-in-Chief of Interior Design, welcoming everyone to a very special town hall with our good friends at the New York School of Interior Design. Now, we know them as NYSID. And the topic today, and this is a really good one, 5 things I wish I knew before I started a career. We need to have this talk, by the way, everyone, because we're living in this crazy Instagram-focused culture of perfection, perfect interiors, perfect everything. And you rarely see the painstaking process that goes into making a project truly special. And I know, everybody, we love a great before and after, but what about all those steps in here, in between, all the subtleties, the details, and the problem solving that a good interior designer and architect learned from years of experience? Well, today you're in luck because we're pulling back the curtain with 2 of the industry's top talents. I am joined by the one and only Alexa Hampton, owner and president of Mark Hampton, and Andrew Oyen, principal of Ferguson and Shamamian Architects, for a candid chat about some of their best and worst moments and what they wish they'd known when they just got started. Hi guys, it's so nice to see you all.
Hi there, very nice to be here, thank you.
Alexa, how are you?
So happy to see you. I cannot tell you, both of you.
I know we're gonna have a great time. Everyone out there, you're in for a treat. Now, as we get started, I just want everyone to know about NYSID. It's by the way, it's up the street from where I live. Founded in 1916, New York School of Interior Design is a private nonprofit college focused exclusively on interior design. It's a beautiful school, offering certificate, undergrad, and grad programs for students at all stages of their career. And by the way, they've been consistently ranked as one of the top interior design programs of the United States. And they do both residential, commercial interior design with some specialties in sustainable design, lighting, and healthcare. They got healthcare interiors, they have it all, everybody. So as we get started, Alexa and Andrew, just a few questions about the profession. First of all, are you an interior designer or an architect?
Alexa?
Interior designer and board member at NYSID.
Yes.
So I've drunk the Kool-Aid. NYSID.
Love that. And Andrew?
And I'm an architect, although I got my start in interior design. I worked for 8 years with an interior designer, and I'm a big fan of NYSID.
There we go. We love that. So I guess the first question is, architecture is a licensed profession and
Yes.
interior design isn't. So with so many designers out there practicing without a degree, why would you choose to go to design school? Alexa, tell us about that.
That is precisely why I would go to design school. If there are many things that one can do to distinguish oneself in one's profession. You can be amazing at it. You can also be wonderful to work with. You can be expert in various things. The way you get to some of those expertises, which are much less ephemeral than being fun to be with or getting out there and getting your work seen. If you've got the chops and you've learned them and you're accredited, it does give a huge amount of credence to a profession that to some feels very wishy-washy. I've been at dinners seated next to, a colleague of my husband's, and, I'm Mrs. Papa, you're you at the dinner. And they're like, so what do you do? And I tell them, and I just watch their eyes. I watch them die inside. Or I feel the pat on the head like, oh, you must shop all day. So, and for sure there are people out there who are incredibly talented. They just have God-given talent. But there's nothing wrong about expertise and knowledge and having an education. And I would totally support. I mean, I only hire from NYSID actually, for not on purpose. It's not a policy, but it happens to be the case.
It happens. It's what happens. And Andrew, so you're an architect, although you said you love interiors.
I do. And I think, I think I'm a firm believer in you don't start learning until you start working. However, an education provides a structure and a discipline within which it's a construct that I think having that background, when you do start working in the field and you find out these experiences are incredibly different, you refer back to the structure that you had in school, as well as some of the fundamental information you use as sort of your building blocks. So I think it's that discipline is really, really important.
Yeah, and I can say as, a magazine that honors the profession, there are very few talents out there that get in the pages of interior design that have not gone to school, because you can see the difference in the projects too. Like everything is different when you're a professional as opposed to not. So good start promoting NYSID, who we love and is supporting our industry in a big way. Now you guys are going to talk to those who are just getting started in their careers. And this is the stuff that you can't pay for this stuff. It's like 5 things. Oh my God, I wish I do.
But feel free to pay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're going to kind of go back and forth with some of your tips and some of your stories that go along with it. Alexa, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
Your number one first tip was don't install unflattering lighting. Lighting gets a bad rap, right?
It's funny that I say that while I'm being blasted by natural light and I look like a ghost. But yeah, lighting is anything that is not obviously part of the visual senses. I mean, that is more than just the visual sense, right? It creates an ambiance, and it's something that people forget to contend with, and one cannot. And I love chandeliers and I love flush mounts, but I don't like living underneath that light. It comes down, it's ghoulish, not my best look. And after all, it's all about vanity. But everybody will tell you that everything has to be on a dimmer. But in addition to that, if you speak to lighting designers, and there are many out there, and it's a rapidly changing business, so it's great to touch base with them whenever possible. The best kind of light comes from having many different sources in the same room. So in the room I'm in, I have downlights, I have sconces, I have lamps, I have picture lights, and I have like can up lights. So I've got it coming from all different directions, which softens one's appearance. And it's a great, easily forgotten aspect of design that should not be forgotten.
Right. And isn't it so funny, because I think we all love lighting, but just in terms of projects, it's the thing that gets sometimes pushed to the side or put in at the end as opposed to the beginning. Andrew, in terms of architecture all the time, which it shouldn't.
Now, so Alexa, Leonard Lauder agrees with you. We were doing the elevator in his apartment building, and we had to run the lighting by him, and he gave us tips on how to make women look beautiful in an elevator.
Yeah.
And he completely supports your point of view.
I love that. Okay, so Alexa's first tip, don't forget about the lighting. You got to install beautiful and lots of different kind of lighting. All right, Andrew, your first tip is, and I love this, you're starting at the top.
Yes.
Always check the attic.
Right, and that's not a metaphor, that's literal. So back in 2001, when business was really quiet, we had a call from a woman in LA to come out and look at her new house, and met her at her property. She purchased it. Very elegantly dressed person, looked very, sort of capable to spend lots of money renovating this, beautiful house from the 20s. The house had been built for a famous movie star. It had been lived on by, I think, Fanny Brice and Alan Ladd and Jerry Ross, and the wall-to-wall carpeting in the library still smelled like bong water. That's what everyone said. So we hear about the plans to renovate the house, and they include replacing the slate roof, which is in bad condition. We go to check the attic and find the whole house has been framed with 2x4s.
Wow.
So that's not so uncommon in Hollywood, where these houses were built like movie sets. They really were built. So, but people think differently today, and earthquakes happen, and they're about to spend a lot of money on this house. So, unfortunately, a lot of the house had to be taken down. It was rebuilt in a beautiful way. It took 2 to 3 years longer than everybody expected. It cost about $7 million more than people expected. Almost ended in a divorce, but they were very happy in the long run. However, I wish we checked the attic on day one.
Yeah, I love there's like an image that there's just the lone staircase and it says save.
So that was the staircase that Fanny Brice used to come down to her parties. That was the grand entrance, right?
Wow. Well, at least you were able to keep the grand entrance, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That's a fantastic story. Okay, Alexa, next is plan for the worst and don't forget insurance. Now, I always say we're very positive. Designers are very positive, but this is a very important tip.
Yeah, insurance is no joke, and it's a grim thing, but you need it. Prepare for the worst and don't forget insurance. That came from a project in New Orleans that got clobbered by Hurricane Katrina, but it had this very silver lining ending that ended in a Botticelli.
Wow. You said they found one?
Well, no, they had it and they thought it was studio of.
Right.
And post Katrina, we had to clean everything, and we sent that to the Met to be cleaned, whereupon they discovered that it was an actual Botticelli. Though that might not be the best story for insurance, because that was the one bad thing that my client said to me later was, crap, my insurance just went up. I think Andrew and I could probably turn your head with crazy stories of things that have, like horrendous things that have happened on job sites. But it's part of being a professional. Right. If you're going to be a professional, you have to approach your workplace professionally. You need to have insurance, you need to understand payroll taxes, but like you've got to get to the nitty-gritty of business if you're going to do it as a business. And I know a lot of times we let ourselves off the hook by saying, oh, we're creative people. We just can't afford not to pay attention to those things. Right. And something I just found out recently was that, and I'm happy, I don't know this from my own experience, knock on wood, but I heard that if you get our industry insurance, you don't have to pay for your legal bills.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
So that could be wrong, but I mean, that could be more specific than that. There could be cases in which that's not the case, but there are cases in which that is the case. So there's just no reason not to do it.
Yeah. And as you said, there's things that you don't want to do, and you have to be very aware as a designer, once you have a firm, what you're not good at, and have somebody else do it when the minute you can hire someone.
But you can't completely divorce yourself from it.
Yes, that's true.
You've got to at least be slightly aware of those things.
That's true. The tough stuff is part of it all, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's the least fun thing to spend money on, but absolutely necessary.
Exactly. So don't forget your insurance, everyone. All right. So something I wish I knew before I started my career, sometimes you have to stick with what you're given.
So a number of years ago, my colleagues Stephen Chrisman and Oscar Shamamian met with a client who's purchased a really cool old house. However, the house was larger than it could be rebuilt. It was in very poor condition. It was really close to the ocean, like close in a good way, in a way that you'd never be able to build it today. 21st century people have a lot more possessions than 19th century people did. We have mechanical systems, electronics, needs for storage to keep our children out of trouble, all sorts of things that people in 1890 didn't have. So we needed to stick with that house because we couldn't have rebuilt it in the same way. So we spent a bunch of money to pick the house up, constructed a full basement underneath it, and put it back down again. along the house was was beloved in the neighborhood because it was so original. It was also beloved by the number of wildlife that was living in the house at the time the owners purchased it.
No.
But we had a lot of scrutiny. The neighbors were watching all this to make sure that we took good care of it and, put it back the way it needed to be put back. The house had a lot of quirky features. They had beautiful odd doors. We moved the doors around to create lovely enfilades to bring the light through. And, we replicated as many things as we could to keep the old charm. But it was a case where you really needed to make do. You could not have replaced that house.
Yeah, and you did. And I mean, that's also a very good message about, like, even though it's not exactly what you had expected, you saved what you could, and it was still present. Like, the essence of that house was still present.
It was. And I think, sometimes things that are, not necessarily what you'd have done, but are quirky and authentic feel good. And you just have to kind of trust that and stick with it.
Alexa, your next thing you wish you knew was to tell somebody to remember to play with scale.
Yes. And I think this is a great thing to talk about with students who are coming into the workforce. They, when you have things that are they're not totally homogeneous, but when you're working in CAD and you're working with templates, I mean, there's a scale that applies to them. But really well done houses have modern scale, which is made for the 21st century ass. It's got antiques, which are not made for the 21st century ass. I mean, they're all different sizes of things, all different shapes, and the best rooms flirt with all of them.
Beautiful, right? And it's something you'll learn. It's almost a constant thing you're always learning, right, with scale, but it's so important. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. Andrew, your next one is, and this is, if people didn't think this is an emotional, an emotional design being emotional, it really is. You say sometimes you're not just an architect. Remember, you're also a therapist.
I know that's a cliche.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a good version of this. So a number of years ago, we had a client. It was his third project. Now, the first was with his first wife. The second was with him as a new bachelor. And the third was with his second wife. This gentleman is as businesslike and conservative and staid as his closet of blue shirts and blue suits will suggest. His new wife was absolutely lovely and vivacious and colorful as the clothing in her closet. And this was a new apartment for them. They're moving in together. So somehow we had to make this apartment work for both of them. We were working with Haynes Roberts on this challenge, who we really collaborated in a great way to fill both needs. And I think we'll show you some pictures of their living room and dining room, which essentially became essays in sort of neutral backgrounds. And we incorporated some things like polished metal and polished wood, which was a nod to him. And it allowed the neutral backgrounds to be a great foil for the very colorful furniture and art, which was really there for her. There's one room in particular that I think really brought them together, and that was the library, which is often, in these 1920s apartments, that was often the gentleman's room. In this case, it's very much both the rooms. They chose a color of aubergine that was just brown enough that it would be read as not purple, that a man could be very happy sitting in. They chose a Benetti table that looked like jewelry that the lady might own. And they chose some beautiful pony skin that brought it all back down to earth. And then last, a fireplace, and I don't know where they found this, but probably the only Georgian fireplace I've ever seen that had bright purple veining.
Wow. And was that like a puzzle that was a constant in this project, that sometimes you have a harder time dealing with than other times not?
In this case, it was delightful because they were in love and really wanted to, sort of work on this.
Yeah.
But it was a challenge because they came in with very different ideas, and we really had to. It was a fun challenge to make it work for both of them.
Yeah, Alexa, you must have that as well, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
That I experience the same thing, but Well, your obvious thing is to negotiate from the one part of the couple, if it's a couple, to the other person in the couple. Something that I sometimes forget is that we're also negotiating on behalf of the person to the person.
Right.
Like, I will go into many houses, and I guess this is just like latent chauvinism on all of our parts. But many women will say, oh, I want this to be my office, and they'll show me like a closet. And the man says, oh, I'm going to take the library. And this happens even in 30,000 square foot houses. And I have to look at the wife and say, you need a bigger office. If you're going to spend any amount of time, like, look at the house you're building. We can find you a space and give you a great office too. You deserve it. And so in that way, we have to be therapists to the person, about the person. Like,
Right.
you're allowed to want these things for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't you think, you guys, right now, because what you work on is so personal with everything that's happening with COVID, how much more do you have to be supportive and a therapist and, you know, that kind of deep connection with your clients right now?
We've made some changes in projects midstream, you know, in this last year. We've turned some bedrooms into offices.
Right.
You know, we've sped up construction projects to get people into some place so they don't have to be cramped in their, you know, New York apartment with their whole family. You know.
Right. Right.
But I think the sometimes flowery way we may speak about a project is now much more understandable to the client
Right.
post-COVID, because they understand the emotions that we might have always imputed to a certain room. Now they get it much more.
Right. Right. I agree. And because also they're using the house more, right?
Yeah. But they understand that it must convey comfort, that you must feel sheltered, that you must feel safe, that, you know, you shouldn't, for those reasons, you shouldn't put a pocket door in front of a bathroom. I mean, there are all kinds of things that the choices you make that are for your sensibilities, for your experience of the house, not just to make the house sound and beautiful.
And in a weird way, don't you think? Because look, you have clients that have very, very big homes, and now they're living in the homes. They're actually living in all the rooms
Yes.
that you've designed. That is a different experience. It must feel very satisfying.
I think a lot of the moves that you took for granted before that, now you really appreciate. You know, some people are ambivalent about a dining room. They think, you know, they eat in the kitchen, right? They grab food when they need to. And now I think having a room that's dedicated to something that's a little bit ceremonial now feels really lovely. Yeah. You know,
and
so I think
it forces you to stop working.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, well, good on you guys. I know your clients are asking for more things and functional things too, which is interesting. All right. So Alexa, your next tip is don't install boring window treatments. You got to layer it.
This is also about like when you get into design, right? So right. Though that alone has a hard definition, getting into design, but so I was raised in a designer atmosphere, obviously. Yeah. And I became very aware of what was what when I was working for my father from 13 on, like a month in the summer. And, you know, that was in the late 80s. And then like, wow, yeah. Fringe and this and that, everything was, you know, gilding the lily. So when my father died in 97 and I took over, I had like a whiplash knee-jerk response where I just didn't want to use trim anymore. I wanted to use tapes, but I didn't want to use cord on tape. I didn't want fringe. So like I needed to go through that period to now be able to say to you, that sucks. You know, like I had to get it out. I needed to level the playing field with all of this gussiness that I've been dealing with. Yeah. I needed to go clean and lie fallow for a while. And now I can come to it with what I feel is a more rounded view. That your windows do a lot for you. You know, you need the curtains to add warmth. You need a shade to cut glare. You definitely need blackout if you're going to go to sleep. The blackout shades that, you know, I came out with last year, you know, I thought we all need, instead of, you know, huge swaths of white plastic, why are our plastic blackout shades why don't they have a cute little pattern on them? Like,
Right.
we've been doing this for 100 years. Why don't we have that? So those, I think, windows are a wonderful moment. They're an elevation. You look at them because of the light. They're a place to really go for it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, give yourself a pitch on the window curtains, because they won Best of Year, right? What's the name? What was the name of the collection?
They did. So it was for the Shade Store, and I have a healthy licensing life, but it always starts with me having some crazy notion and picking up the phone and calling. So I had this gentleman's card from speaking in Texas once, and I had said to myself, when I have a really good idea, I'm going to call him. And so my idea was, how can I be working on these houses where the people spend millions of dollars building it and decorating it, and for their Lutron systems or their whatever, and you have this incredibly complex window program, and down comes a 12-foot by 9-foot piece of white plastic facing the owners when they're in the bedroom. Like, that is absolutely not appropriate.
Right.
It has to be better than that.
Right. Well, congrats on that. By the way, I do want to give you a big shout out for students out there, anyone who's listening. So Alexa was referring to her father, Mark Hampton, who was really, one of the top American designers in our field. And for you it's been over 20 years now of carving out your own path, having a hero for a father, and somebody I know you were loved and was so close to, but finding your own path, really it's a big testament to you, Alexa. So I just want to give you kudos on that. And you figured out the wall. You figured out
I figured that out. I figured out the flush mount, and I've got some other ideas that I hope, like, if those are things that I can use and be like, wow, that changed my life.
Yeah.
Wow, what a thing to think.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so we have a few more tips. Andrew, yours is a big general, which I think is important for others to listen to. Don't lose sight of the end goal, even when you're keeping your client happy, because that's very hard to balance that, right?
It is, making someone happy. Before I move on to that, I'm going to tell Lexa, your father was the first person I worked with when I joined Ferguson Schmamian in '96.
On Burden?
Yes, in a beautiful house in Bedford. And one of my first experiences was meeting Oscar at 8 a.m, taking a cab up to his office, where he was attired in the most beautiful suit with his Waterman pen, taking notes. It was, I felt like, it just felt like the quintessential New York experience, dream come true. It was so nice working with him.
Thank you. I love hearing that.
It's beautiful.
So but being a leader, I think, being a good designer and listening to your client, but also being a leader. So sometime much later than when I worked with your father, I was quite mature, and I was booed by Jacques Grange at a client meeting. This had been a 3-year design process with clients who were very interested in exploring every aspect of the design, and the design changed this way and that way a million times. This meeting was to wrap up the whole process, and we had samples of everything that had been selected. Because everything had been so fluid, I showed the door hardware with photographs rather than actual samples, and Jacques stood up and booed me for not taking the process seriously enough. So okay,
that's an addressable boo. I didn't know the extent of the boo, and my heart stopped. That's an acceptable boo.
Yeah.
And it really made me realize that you have to take all of this very seriously and be a really good leader for your clients, and recognize the commitments that they make as real commitments. So I carry that story with me as a sort of memory of how to always sort of push yourself to become, a good guide through this process. So years after that, we were working for a repeat client on a project in Florida. And years earlier, when we did their first project in Martha's Vineyard, we were too good listeners and not good enough guides. And we let them lead a design that ultimately we realized was never going to be passed by the historic review board. So rather than waste their time, we had to go to them and say, we need to redo this, and we're gonna do this at our own expense, and we're gonna redesign your house a bit in a way that passes. And we were rewarded for this by getting approval on the first go. which is really important in Martha's Vineyard.
Right.
Fast forward to about 10 years later, they're building a house in Florida where there are no restrictions whatsoever. And this time they want to have fun. We forgot all of the lessons we should have learned in Martha's Vineyard, and we went through 21 schemes of schematic design, all kind of allowing themselves to, to have fun with that process. But at some point, we remembered Martha's Vineyard and we said, we got to put the brakes on this, because at some point they're going to get fed up. And we chose one of the schemes that we knew they'd like, that we knew intuitively was going to work for us, for them. And we brought it to them and said, we've got to stop this and start building your house.
Yeah.
And they listened and said, you're right. And it kept our fees in check. It kept their project somewhat on schedule, and it got the thing built, and they love it. So I think it's something I do also remember, that you have to be, you're a professional that is being hired. Now, we do things, Alexa and I both do things that are very custom. They're highly personal, but at the same time, you have to be a guide.
Yeah, no, it's good advice. And it's something you always have to also tell yourself as you keep going, right? Sometimes you forget that,
yes,
and you let them take you on all these different journeys.
Yes.
Okay, so Alexa, yeah, you start and end with, you've got the crane now. So we're back to the crane. So be prepared for a crane, or at least a sofa doctor.
Yeah. So there are two companies in New York. One is called Sofa Doctor and the other one is called Dr. Sofa. And there are times in every New York designer's life where no matter how many times you've measured that doorway with your movers, the sofa or the whatever doesn't fit in the door. And these are terrifying, really scary moments. And you have to be nimble. You got to problem solve. And sometimes that means chopping the sofa. Please don't do it in front of the client. Do it, get it in, never have the homeowner around when you're installing. In any case, it's just going to give them an ulcer. But as you can see, it's almost like a Magritte. We're moving a bush in the south of France, and it's dangling above a reflecting pool. But yeah, cranes are often part of it too. You have a crane going up to the 10th floor of a building to bring in a piano. Some crazy things can happen, like you need a crane, you need a sofa doctor, which just goes back to telling you that there's a huge logistical element to everything we do, and there is rational reason for things. And when you can describe and discuss with the homeowner what the rational reason is behind something, they totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this sort of ends it on a really interesting note, because you were talking about scale being big. And Andrew, your last tip was measure the chargers and the toilet paper before designing the cabinetry. So it's, also it's big,
macro
but it's all of the details. Yeah.
Yes, background full circle. So there's a classic FNS, a story at FNS that gets told to almost every new hire, where we had to tear out an entire kitchen that had just been built for a very important and very impatient man in finance, because we had not measured their buffet chargers. They're overly large, oversized buffet chargers. And not only the upper cabinets had to be rebuilt to accommodate those, but the lower ones as well, because you need 12 inches between the face of an upper and the face of a lower, you bang your head. So that story gets told to everybody, at some point. Fast forward years later, and we're doing a beautiful and sort of minimalist stone bathroom, which wants no hardware whatsoever. So we're doing custom stone toilet paper recessed niches. And the project architect, who's very smart and very diligent, measures rolls of toilet paper and sends out company user emails to find out the right size of a roll. We have the stone toilet paper niches made, go to install the house, and sure enough find that the toilet paper that this client uses is too big, and that they buy a luxury oversized brand that is only available through Costco. But they are committed to that toilet paper and they're not going to give up. So we have to beg the contractor, who is lovely group of people, to very carefully chisel out those toilet paper niches and reinstall them 1/2 inch larger.
I love that we're ending on, you know, what do they say? God in design is all about the detail. But as you can all see, like, it's also, design is all about problem solving. Every single tip is almost like a problem solving equation. So first of all, I think we should have a round two. I don't know, I'm just saying, because you guys are amazing. I want to thank both of you dearly, and also NYSID, New York School of Interior Design. Like, thank you for allowing us to have this conversation. This is important and meaningful for our community and for younger designers as they're coming into the profession. There's a little bit of information on NYSID. So they have rolling admissions and they're currently accepting applications. So you can request information and start your application at NYSID, NYSID.edu. And if you're not sure what program is right for you, they'll have somebody who'll talk to you. They have counselors. They're amazing. They'll help you. Because I know you all love design. You're trying to figure it out. They will help you. So if you want to learn anything else about any kind of continuing and professional studies, NYSID.edu, and then there's a /ICPS. That's for continuing ed courses. I think I got it right. But first of all, we love you guys. Thanks for everything you do in our industry about moving our industry forward. We're going to get past everything we're going through right now, and we see you as leaders, and we really thank you so much.
Right back at you.
Oh, yes, thank you so much.
Right back at you.